Welcome to Forum 360. Thank you for joining us on our global outlook with a local view. This is Leslie Unger, your host today. Imagine aging being described as tender and joyful. What if Alzheimer's was a welcome conversation rather than a topic to be avoided? Who among us reads a book about a difficult topic like Alzheimer's and makes it into a stage production? Our guest today did just that. He read a book, The Remember Balloons, about this difficult topic, wrote a tender and joyful stage production, and encourages intergenerational conversations. Dominick Moore-Duncan is an award-winning choreographer based in Akron. He is the co-founder and creative director of Moore-Duncan Works, a family-led creative studio and consulting company, helping people move better as teams, as couples, and artists. While we will look at his career, we will focus on the Remember Balloons. Welcome to Forum 360.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. So since the play, The Remember Balloons, is about Alzheimer's, what was, either before you read the book, or what is your working definition of this condition that we call Alzheimer's?
So I spend a lot of time with the show being with young people. So when I go on tour around the country, I'm usually with kids from K to 5. So I'm usually saying, well, what do you think Alzheimer's is? And I kind of like taking a conglomeration of definitions from young people about it. So what we usually say is Alzheimer's is a disease that makes your loved ones forget the things they want to remember.
That's a good way to put it.
And so we all kind of can feel that and understand that without getting too technical. And if I say that to kids, they go, okay, I got it. I understand what this does and how it functions without kind of getting to the really dark side of what it can be, but still giving it reverence to what it actually is.
Now, your play, The Remember Balloons, was inspired by this award-winning children's book of the same name. So let's start there. I don't really think about a children's book about Alzheimer's as inspiration for a children's play using dance. So tell us how you went from reading a book to wanting to write, choreograph, produce, star in, and then market the play.
Yeah, so I was at the Chateau Library near Firestone High School when I found the book. Me and my wife had our, at the time, 2- and 1-year-old in the children's section, and it'd been a while. We'd been in there for like 90 minutes. So I was like, okay, it's time to go home. Let me find some books to take home. So I found this shelf that said children's books about difficult topics.
Okay.
And if anybody knows me and my work, difficult topics is kind of where I live when I create choreography. So I was like, well, this is a really interesting combination. Children's books, difficult topics. So I just started like flipping through all these books, and this white book with all these colorful balloons caught my eye. I was like, oh, I wonder what this is about. So I opened it up and I read this beautiful story about this little boy who has all these balloons, and his memories are inside the balloons. And he spends a lot of time with his grandfather, and they spend their time sharing stories and sharing memories of what's in their balloons. And halfway through the book, you learn that grandpa's losing all his balloons. Now, think about it. I didn't know what this book was about. I was just reading this thing. So as soon as that happened, my first reaction was like, oh no. So as I'm reading it, the tears just started falling from my eyes because it was so beautiful and so difficult, because now it's this little boy who's trying to figure out what it means to love someone who's forgetting who you are, and how difficult that is for a young person to understand. So I read the book, I handed it to my wife, and she read the book. She was crying. We packed up the kids, we took them home, and we spent the rest of the afternoon and evening talking about Alzheimer's and dementia. And at one point in the conversation, my wife Ashley said to me, you know, I remember the day my grandmother forgot who I was, and she never remembered me again. And full context, I'm 35, she's 34. We met at Firestone when we were 17 and 18.
Wow.
And started dating then. So we've been together
and
a very long time.
And you've
yeah, the whole time, high school sweethearts. And I never heard that story. And it was because of this book that it brought up this memory for her, this balloon for her to say this. And I was like, what? So we kind of unpacked it. How did that feel? And then later that night, it was 2:30 in the morning. I had a 2 and 1 year old, so I was up again in the middle of the night, changing diapers, doing the thing. And I was just up and I couldn't go to sleep. And I just had this quiet voice that was like, find the author, just reach out to them. So got on my phone, just looked up Jesse Oliveros' name, and I wrote in her little form, hey, this is what happened to my family reading your book. Thank you for writing it. I know I'm an artist. I know how hard it is to make something with this much impact to it. And at the very end, and I blame it on like my really tired 2:30 in the morning, brain. I was just like, P.S., would you ever let me turn this into a stage show? And I just hit send. And I never thought anything would come up. About 6, 7, 8 hours later, I opened up my inbox and I have an email from her agent saying, hey, we love this idea. Do you have 30 minutes today at 3 o'clock to pitch me an idea? Wow. And I was like, sure. What ideas? Because that was the idea.
No, we used to call that, what did they call that? Like mom, baby brain? Like for mom, now baby brain, like for dads?
But like I didn't have any ideas, so like I had to book at home, so I just started flipping through the book like crazy and coming up with these ideas, looking at the pages and be like, oh, this moment could look like this on stage, and this could look like this on stage. And I want to do it with jazz music, so I want to work with my best friend Theron Brown, who's this brilliant pianist in town. So I ended up pitching it to the author and their agent. They loved it. The next week, pitching it to the illustrator and their agent. They loved it. And 4 months later, we bought the exclusive North American rights to the book. Wow. So me and my wife are the producers. We're the only people in all of North America who can turn this book into a stage show. And that's kind of how it came to be.
Now, can you explain to the audience, and you started talking about the balloons, and as a communication coach, I think that the visual is very important, and the kind of balloons caught your eye. Yeah. But can you tell us what the balloons, how they are a metaphor in this book for Alzheimer's?
So when you're reading the book, you actually see James, the little boy, and Grandpa. You actually see their memory inside of the balloon itself. So the first balloon you see is James remembering his birthday from a year ago. And you see his birthday inside of the balloon. And so the metaphor is these balloons represent their memories.
Then how do you do that then on stage?
So on stage, what we do is we have one actor is James, one actor is Grandpa, and we also put Mom in the show. So the cast has 3 people in the show. And what we do is we actually use projection. So we had the illustrator create the actual illustrations, turn them into projections for us. So as the show unfolds, it looks like a picture book on stage, because the first scene we call Joyful Noise is that scene of the birthday party, and our James is dancing around stage remembering his birthday party physically as you see the balloon on the back screen kind of like moving from side to side with the picture, his memory inside of it.
So you're able to use dance and like very current technology and the maybe a little bit of AI in there.
Yeah, that gets you all the way through the show. So every projection you see in the book, every illustration you see in the book turns into a projection on stage. We even have some projections on stage that the illustrator created original for our show as well. So we have a dog who kind of like moves inside of a balloon in a way that they animate in a way that they don't obviously in the book. So so it really feels like you're watching the book being opened up on the stage right in front of you.
Now, you wrote and choreographed the play. The only way that I can think about it, and I wrote my 3rd and final ever book, okay? It came out right the same month as the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that was great timing, right? But you write this book, you write this play, right? And you spend all of this time and all this blood and all of this sweat. And then you're like worn out, and then you have to market it, right? Yes. So how do you market a play about Alzheimer's?
So I think a lot what worked for us, so I have agents who help me, and that's really helpful. Our show lives inside of the Theater for Young Audiences and community engagement space in the performing arts national touring scene. But what we figured out a way to do, because who we're marketing to is the presenters, the people who are at the venues, like that's our buyer, versus like the general public, right? It's the venue's job to market to the general public, we market to them. So early in the project, I didn't wait to finish the entire project to market it. What I did was I created one scene, the purple balloon scene, which is about Grandpa remembering his wife the day they got married.
Purple is my favorite color.
Yeah, it's the day that him and his wife got married. So it's this really emotional, beautiful duet that we created. That's their first dance at their wedding. So I created that in the studio. I videoed it, and then I went to New York City to this big booking conference. And we set up in one of the rooms, and I just played the video for people. So there's all these presenters who are interested in this. How are you turning this Alzheimer's story for young people and their families into something that people can take because it scares people? And I just showed them one scene, and I just talked about it the same way we're talking about it. I just talked about why it means something to me and what we want to do with this show. Now, to this point, I'd only made 5 minutes of this thing. And then, but we put on like kind of makeshift costumes. We had our pianist in the corner playing live during it. And he was playing Unforgettable at the time because he hadn't created the composition for it yet. And we just used that. And from there, we had six presenters across the country actually bring us in that summer to help us make the show. So they paid for us to come into their venue to make the show on their stages. So it was ready for national touring come October 2024.
Wow.
Yeah.
24. So that was your debut. So that's very recent.
Yeah, very recent. Yeah, we're about to start our second national tour come September 30th.
So you like have 3 babies.
Yeah.
Right? This is like your third.
I really do. And it's the most troublesome of the 3.
I want to take a moment to reintroduce our guest today, Dominick Moore-Duncan, choreographer, educator, dancer, talking about his journey and his play, The Remember Balloons. So you mentioned Theron Brown. He was born and raised in Zanesville, and you were born and raised in Akron, right? How has your upbringing, and I will say you and you as a best friend, I imagine you might know from Theron, how has your upbringing influenced your perspectives on life and dance?
Well, I think for both of us, Theron is a preacher's kid. Which is fun because my wife is also a preacher's kid. So
Now, did you know him growing up?
I did not. Oh. I didn't meet Theron until I think 2018.
So you don't know if like the preacher kid's the bad kid or the
right. I don't know
kid.
which version of the preacher kid he was.
Okay.
But I think if you listen to Theron's music, right, like he's this amazing jazz player, but it's infused with a lot of blues in it and a lot of gospel. So if you watch the Remember Balloons, you hear the tinges of gospel and blues amongst this jazz music, and that's what makes it so layered and beautiful. And it represents something very grounding in American culture because jazz, blues, gospel are all American music. That's what it is. And so we really wanted to ground it in the thing that he grew up in, and to tell this story about this family, because that's the kind of family he grew up in, right? In the church. For me, I grew up in a multi-generational home. So I grew up with my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mom, and my older sister. And I'm the youngest.
Did you ever do anything wrong that you got caught
I always
doing?
did everything wrong. But only boy, youngest in the house.
Wow.
So part of when I saw this book, the first thing I noticed, I was like, oh, James is living in a multi-generational home. He lives with his parents and his grandfather. So that's where it connected for me. Right, being in a multi-generational home, growing up at the foot of my great-grandmother and my grandmother especially, listening to their stories about life and learning from that, I saw the same thing with James sitting at the foot of his grandfather, hearing his stories about life, about when his dog went missing, he had to chase him down to the school on a Saturday. That happens in the book. So that's the thing that really connected with me. So in a lot of my work is about intergenerational storytelling. Sometimes it gears more towards like the family entertainment side, the Remember Balloons. Sometimes the topic's a little bit more difficult, like police brutality. But it's talked about in the world of how do generations in a home talk to each other about these difficult conversations. So I think for both of us, we really bring our upbringing as people into our art, and then in this project we were able to bring that together.
Well, I know that you are described as a choreographer, educator, arts leader, but I want to ask you about your writing.
Yeah.
Because your writing is incredible. Okay, I just picked out like one sentence. Raised by the rhythms of a multi-generational house, wrapped in music, silence, and side eyes from your grandma. How do you learn to write like that?
I don't know. I think of things like, it's kind of hard to describe. Like when I think about words are just dancers in my head. So I choreograph words on paper, the same way I choreograph bodies in space. So I think about rhythm and rhyme as I'm thinking about words. So it's not just like, what am I trying to communicate? Part of what's really important is what is the feeling that you get when I put those words on paper, and that's part of what I'm thinking about. you know, so the side eye, and like when I say that, like you can imagine and you get a feeling of being side-eyed by your grandmother.
I get a side eye from my dog. You got a side eye from your grandma. I get a side eye from my dog.
But we all have these like feelings attached to this,
Yes.
you know, and words aren't empty vessels. They hold a lot of weight. So I sit and I think about what's the feeling I had when I was growing up. Oh, I remember my grandma used to look at me like that. Okay, so I want to attach that feeling inside of this sentence, right? I want to talk about the rhythm of life that we had, because I grew up dancing. I'm really attuned to movement and rhythm and how people walked in the house, what it sounded like when my mom walked down the steps versus my grandma versus my great-grandma. And you know, it's that classic, like I can always tell who's walking down the steps depending on the rhythm in which they move, right?
Oh, how interesting.
So this dance and words, they're all the same in my brain in that way, and that's part of what I'm thinking about when I write.
Well, you talk about, with words, you know, urban Midwest storytelling. So I want to ask you, how is urban Midwest storytelling different than, say, American Indian storytelling or another culture? Many cultures have even passed down all their traditions and customs through storytelling. So how is urban Midwest storytelling different?
Yeah, so the way I like to describe it is it's connected to my family. So my great-grandmother is from Elizabeth, Mississippi. She was born in 1915, which means she was a black woman in the South during Jim Crow America. And she made her way up north, and Elizabeth, Mississippi is in the heart of the Delta. What was born in the Delta? The blues. So part of what she brought into our home was this love for blues music. So, you know, I'm a 90s kid. A lot of people grow up talking about like, yeah, I listened to a lot of R&B growing up. My house, it was the blues. Like that's what we listened to. So it's just a very natural part of like my life. And as I grew up in Akron, this Rust Belt city, you could feel it growing up that like we lived in this city that feels like it was in the middle of trying to become something, but still trying to heal from being something at the same time, and kind of stuck in this middle place. We constantly have people leaving our city. So in Akron specifically, we have this beautiful juxtaposition between the greenery, Summit Metro Parks and the Emerald Necklace, and all these buildings that were vacant. And there was this like juxtaposition I always noticed, like it's so green, but no one's here. And so I always felt like there was this tension between beauty and despair. And that's where our story comes from as people from the urban Midwest. And so it's deeply connected to the blues, which is all about a very similar thing. Like the blues came from slave time America, where these people were trying to figure out a way to express their hope for a future when they were no longer enslaved, but in their current reality. So it had this sense of hope. In urban Midwest storytelling, it holds that same level of hope, but it's from this northern respectability. This, we got something, but we still have a level of despair, and I'm playing with that rhythm at all times. So when you read my writing or you see my choreography, you always feel like you're somewhere on that spectrum of dealing with that tension.
Now, is that what you refer to when you talk about the quiet power of Black family using stories to survive and thrive?
Yeah, absolutely. Because right, there's a juxtaposition, thrive, survive. And you're always stuck somewhere in the middle, right? You're always trying to figure out like, how do I get to tomorrow to next week? Like I think about my mom and my grandma who were thinking about their children in this country and saying, how do we make sure they can thrive? But also in the current day when we're in financial woes, we're also surviving at the same time, but we don't want the kids to know that. So we're in this juxtaposition and this tension at all times. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as the human experience. We all understand that I want my life to be something better than it is. I want I want my children's life to be better than mine. Yeah. So there's a thriving, but there's also a sense of like present day surviving. Like how do I get through what's difficult today? What's difficult in life right now? What if I can't pay my bills? What if someone I love dearly passed away and I have to survive through that? So I think as people, we're always universally in that tension. I think part of what I love to do is really highlight it and set it in front of us and just say, let's all talk about it and not hide that we constantly live inside of this together.
Now, I would like to bring both the Remember Balloons and the storytelling kind of together. You know, I was kind of against my better judgment. I was watching America's Got Talent last week, and there was a magician on, and Mel B was the only judge that didn't vote for this magician because she said, I don't understand the story, there's no story. And without a story, I don't understand what he's trying to say. So talk to us about the power of storytelling and Alzheimer's.
Yes. So I have one of my favorite podcasts. I found it in 2017. The podcast is called You Are a Storyteller. And on the podcast, there's a man named Brian McDonald, and he is a consultant who works with like Disney and some of these like big mega corporations who tell stories. And in the first episode, he talks about just the core of storytelling. What is the point of telling stories? And he breaks it down to, from a very human standpoint, it's survival information. Like we have, through human history, we have taught people things through story, right?
Yes.
So when you think of the tortoise and the hare, right? The whole point of the tortoise and hare is you go slow, right? So that you're able to sustain over time. And what happens when we get into our 30s and 40s and like our work-life balance is off and all those things, we end up saying like, oh, I should probably slow down. Well, someone taught us that when we were a kid, and they said, be the tortoise, not the hare, right? And so I really clung on to that because I recognized that, oh, that's what my family was doing for me. They were telling me stories about their lives as a way to warn me or tell me about how to live this life, knowing that's going to be different for me, but grounding me in some of these principles and some of these ideas about how you live a life well. So when I think about Alzheimer's and I think about the Remember balloons, all we're trying to do is really give the message of cherish your memories and cherish each other. That is the survival information we're trying to tell you. That amongst all the craziness of the world, amongst this terrible disease that we don't have a solution for and we don't know when we will, the thing we can do is sit at the foot of your grandparent, listen to them, get off your phone, right? Be with the people you love, and then cherish the memories that they have. Take those memories so then you can pass down those memories, but also cherish just the time that you have together. And that's all we're trying to say. So that's like our little piece of survival information for audience members. And we hope that they take that away.
Now, I have to get this question in. You are co-founder and creative director of Moore-Duncan Works, family-led creative studio and consulting company helping people move better. So I have to ask you, as a person who apparently was born with no sense of rhythm, how do you help people move better and why?
I mean, we do it in a lot of ways. I mean, from a choreography standpoint, like we make these shows that move people inside, right? It makes them hopefully leave the theater and move differently, about the world differently. Like in the sense of the show, it makes them call their grandmother as soon as they get to the car and be like, I haven't talked to her in a long time, I want to talk to her, right? So it moves you differently. As it comes to like teams, my wife also, we use movement as a way to consult with nonprofit organizations in Northeast Ohio to get them moving and learning about team dynamics. So like a lot of times you sit in these like sit and soak professional development meetings where someone lectures you for 90 minutes. If you come to ours, you're standing and moving for 90 minutes, learning about conflict management, learning about trust and communication and creative problem solving. So we're moving people that way and moving people in here. Then personally, like I'm a teaching artist, so like I literally physically move people as well. So I teach them how to move, I teach them how to dance, I teach them the importance of dance as a form for humanity, which I think is really important. Dance is the oldest living archive that we have as people. We moved our bodies before we did anything, before we were able to talk or sing or draw.
Or tell stories.
Or tell stories,
wow.
Right? We could dance, we can move. And so ultimately, like, we want to move people because we feel like so much of our world is stagnant by so much, right? Whether it's anxiety of moving forward in some kind of way, or they feel like systems are keeping them stuck, or they feel like their own personal family dynamics keep them stuck. And our role is just, can we help you move? Because it's the classic saying, the easiest kind of car to move is one that's already moving, right? So our job is just, can we get you to move in here, or in your body?
Now, tell us in the remaining moments, how can we see this play? You mentioned you're starting your second world tour, national tour. How can we see this play?
So we're traveling around the nation, and you can go to my website, dommooreduncan.com, to find the dates that will be around the country. But you can actually see the show on PBS Western Reserve. It's on demand right now.
Okay, great.
And you can also go onto PBS Western Reserve's YouTube channel, and it's on there as well. So we have a really amazing team at Nell Shelby Productions from New York City. They're the same people who filmed the Alvin Ailey Company and some of the big companies in New York City, came and filmed our show. So it's up for everyone to see. You can watch it right now.
Okay. We have time for just one or two questions. You work with young dancers, yes? What have you learned from one of your youngest dancers, either in your studio or in the play?
You know, the interesting thing about young dancers is that they don't have fear yet of their bodies, right? Their bodies are so capable. And so I'm always reminded, as someone who's now a producer and administrator where money's involved, and it can be really scary, that like you can move with strategy, but without fear. And I think that's really important.
Thank you. I value the world of storytelling. My world is verbal, and the world for our guest today is largely movement. For Dominick Moore-Duncan, movement is a way of seeing the world. It's the language his body speaks when the words run out. Through his play, The Remember Balloons, when Grandpa's balloons begin to float away, James begins to catch them. When Grandpa no longer has balloons of his own, it's up to James to share his grandpa's balloons with the world, one by one. Dominick, thank you for sharing your balloons with us today. I'm Leslie Unger. Thank you for joining us on Forum 360 for our global outlook with a local view.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.